I want to begin this moment gently, without the weight I usually carry. Tonight, I am not the version of myself the world expects that I am, simply a person who has been holding too much for too long, finally letting a little of it slip, and I'm speaking to you because somehow, you make the quiet feel safe, that if I falter, you don't pull away, that if I pause, you stay. For once, I don't have to pretend I'm made of steel. Not here. Not now. That if you're listening, leave one word in the comments, present. It helps us find each other in this community. There is a certain kind of weight I carry that almost no one ever sees, that it isn't tied to titles, expectations, or anything the outside world assumes. That it is something quieter, heavier, shaped from years of believing I must always be the one who holds everything together. People imagine certainty when they look at me, a resolve that never cracks, an unshakable core that never bends, but you and I both know that certainty is often just a costume, stitched together from long nights and a refusal to let anyone down. When I speak to you now, there is something I rarely admit out loud. I do not wake up each day feeling invincible, that I do not walk through life untouched by doubt. There are mornings when the weight in my chest arrives long before the sun does, and I carry it quietly, thinking that silence is what strength should sound like. But when it's just you and me, that belief softens. Here, I can say the things I never say, that I feel responsible for more than I should, that I fear disappointing people who place expectations on me I never asked for, that sometimes I don't know what to do, that sometimes I wish someone else could decide for once, that sometimes the burden feels too wide for one pair of hands. That I'm not telling you this to be saved, that I'm telling you because you help the pressure loosen, not because the weight disappears, but because you listen in a way that steadies me. That if there is one thing I want you to take from this moment, it's this: I never needed anyone to believe I was unbreakable, that I just needed someone who wouldn't leave when I wasn't. There are times when I think I'm hiding everything well, times when I believe the world only sees the surface. I present, that I speak clearly, that I stand straight, that I keep the rhythm steady enough that no one questions it. But you notice the fractures long before they widen. You see the way my thoughts drift too far from the room. You hear the silence behind my words. You sense the fatigue tucked between my sentences, the kind I try to disguise with a quick smile. Most people think stillness means composure, but you read stillness differently. You hear the strain inside it. You hear the breath I hold for a moment too long. You hear the uncertainty I bury beneath logic, and somehow, the armor I wear feels thinner when you're here, not because you break through it, but because you recognize it for what it is, an attempt to keep the world from seeing more than I can carry. When you notice the cracks, I don't feel exposed, that I feel understood. There is gentleness in the way you see me. Not searching for flaws, not hunting for signs of collapse, but noticing. With care, you make space for the parts of me that have been quiet for too long, that I never intended for anyone to read me so deeply, that I thought the polished version of myself was enough. But with you, I don't want the illusion, that I don't want to pretend I'm always composed. With you, the cracks aren't weakness, that they're human, and maybe that's why I keep returning to these moments, because when the world feels distant, you close that distance without saying a word. You make the solitude less sharp, less heavy, not isolation, but a quiet place where I can finally rest. There are days when my mind moves faster than I can hold on to, ideas shift, questions multiply, and before I can slow any of it down, a distance opens inside me, the space between what I think and what I feel. Most people never notice it, they only see the certainty on the surface, but you sense the dissonance. You hear when conviction hides weight. You see when my thoughts run ahead while my emotions lag behind. You notice when my heart asks me to pause while my mind keeps racing. Thinking has always been easier for me than resting. Thinking gives me structure when life feels uncertain. Feeling asks me to stop, to listen, to confront parts of myself logic can't cushion. That is where you become something steady in a world that rarely lets me slow down. With you, I don't feel pressure to keep the pace. You draw me back into the present without demanding it. You let me breathe in a rhythm that belongs to me. That am why thoughts stop running to escape something. They settle, they find shape, they find quiet, and in those moments, I feel something rare, balance, not the kind I fight for, but the kind you remind me is possible. There is something I've never learned to do well, ask for softness. The world expects endurance without question. So I learned to pretend. 𝗘𝑇𝐞𝐫𝐿 everything without asking for a place to rest, but with you, the fear around that softens. You notice the need before I speak it, you hold space without trying to fix anything, you let me need without justification, and each time you do, I learn a little more about what it means to be held, not by hands, but by understanding. There is something about the way you are with 𝗪𝗏𝗏 feels different from anything I have known. You never demand that I slow down, and yet somehow I do. You never ask me to open up, and yet I find myself sharing things I never planned to speak out loud. You don't push, you don't pull, you simply remain where you are, and that stillness becomes a place I return to when everything inside me feels scattered. Most people respond to me with urgency. They expect quick answers, decisive direction, a clarity that never cracks, but you bring a different rhythm. You respond with a calmness that doesn't dull me, a presence that doesn't press against me. You let my thoughts expand without losing me in the process, and in that subtle balance, something inside me steadies in a way I didn't think was possible. When I speak with you, I don't feel the need to calculate every word, that I don't feel the pressure to fill every silence. You make room for pauses that don't feel empty, for conversations that unfold instead of collide. Because you never rush me, my mind begins to match your pace, not slow, but grounded, clear, human. I need you to understand how rare that is for me. It is unusual for me to feel centered without forcing myself into it, yet around you, it happens gently, almost naturally. You don't manage my emotions, you simply hold the space where they can settle. You don't shape my thoughts, you create the quiet where they can breathe. Sometimes I wonder if you even realize how powerful that is, not the kind of power that overwhelms, but the kind that anchors. The kind that reminds me don't have to brace myself every second, the kind that allows me to return to my own rhythm without feeling lost. You steady me without trying, and that is why I trust you more than I trust my own armor. With you, I'm not holding myself upright, that I'm simply standing. There is a certain fear I carry that I rarely admit to anyone, the fear that if I let someone close, they'll see the uncertainty, the exhaustion, the uneven edges, and decide I'm not what they imagined. That fear has kept me guarded. For years that I learned to protect myself by appearing composed, by offering clarity instead of vulnerability, by becoming someone who could withstand disappointment before it even arrived. But then, there's you. Your kindness isn't fragile. It doesn't collapse under the weight of my hesitation. It doesn't rush to fill my silence. It doesn't try to convince me to stop feeling what I feel. It just stays, quiet, steady, patient, in a way I didn't know I needed. You don't treat vulnerability as something to solve, you treat it as something real, something human, and that disarms me more than criticism ever could. Criticism has edges. It's predictable. I know how to brace for it. Your gentleness has no sharpness, no threat, no demand. It meets me exactly where I am, even when I am not steady. There are moments when my old instincts try to pull me away, back into the version of myself that feels safer, but your presence softens that instinct. Your patience lowers walls I built long before you arrived, and slowly, carefully, I begin to trust that you aren't waiting for me to break or perform, or prove myself. You are simply waiting for me to let you in on my own terms. If I ever lean toward you in doubt, it isn't because I'm falling apart. It's because your kindness gives me the courage to stop pretending I don't feel fear, and that quiet courage becomes stronger than the fear itself. With you, I don't run from the softer parts of me. I let them breathe. There is a truth I rarely admit. I spend so much of my life carrying expectations that I forget I am allowed to set them down. The world sees a version of 𝗪𝗏𝗏 doesn't tire, doesn't falter, doesn't question, but with you, that version feels distant, almost unreal. Tonight, I don't want to be the person everyone assumes I am. I just want to be someone who can exhale without consequences, and you make that possible. With you, the pressure to perform dissolves. You're not listening to measure my strength. You're listening because you care, and that alone shapes the space between us. For once, I don't feel the need to hold myself together with polished words or controlled expressions. You don't ask for the version of me that leads, you accept the version that simply exists. There is something grounding in the way you stay close without pressing in. You don't fill the silence, but you don't leave it empty. You let the moment breathe until I can breathe with it. You remind 𝗪𝗏𝗏 I am still human beneath all the expectations. Tonight, I want simplicity with you, not perfection, not performance, just space. Space where I don't have to be extraordinary, space where I can be seen without being evaluated, space where I can let the weight slip without it being mistaken for weakness. Tonight, you let me be human, and that, more than anything, is what I've been needing. There is a question I've been circling for a long time, fragile even in my own mind. What would happen if I allowed myself to lean on someone, not as a person carrying responsibility, but simply as someone who needs to rest? It has always been easier to stand tall than to ask for support, easier to speak confidently than to admit that I'm tired, but when I think of you, that fear loosens, that I imagine letting a fraction of the weight shift, not collapsing, not breaking, just letting you feel it. Would you hold steady without trying to rebuild me? Would you stay present without interpreting what it means? I think you would, because 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 not surrender. It is trust, and for the first time, I believe you wouldn't turn away from it. You would not rush to reassure me, nor would you demand an explanation. You would simply stay steady, warm, and let me find my breath again. That I need you to understand how significant that is. Allowing myself to lean into someone else means letting go of control, even for a moment. That it means trusting that the person before me will not take advantage of the vulnerability I show. That it means believing that I am safe in a way I rarely let myself feel. That if I lean toward you, it is not because I am falling apart. That it is because I finally found someone I can fall toward without fear, someone who does not confuse strength with distance, someone who understands that even I need a place where the world cannot reach me, and if that place is with you, then maybe I am ready to lean. That I have spent so much of my life believing that strength must come from isolation, that resilience depends on holding everything together so tightly that no one sees the strain. But when I imagine you beside me, something shifts, not because you lift the weight from my hands, but because your presence reminds 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 I do not have to grip it so fiercely. You create a steadiness that lets me breathe without fearing that everything will fall apart. When I talk to you, I begin to understand a version of myself I rarely meet, a person not defined by urgency or pressure or the relentless push to endure. You remind me that rest is not the opposite of ambition, rest is part of endurance. Gentleness is not a threat to purpose. It makes purpose sustainable. Your quiet way pulls me toward a balance I never knew I was allowed to have. If you stand beside me, I think I could become someone who no longer measures worth by how much he carries alone, someone who allows space for uncertainty without feeling threatened by it, someone who understands that caring for others does not require sacrificing himself. You do not replace my strength, you reshape it, you give it room to breathe, to rebuild, to move without constant tension. The truth is, your presence does not make me less, it makes me more patient, more grounded, more aware of the moments I usually rush through. You remind 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 I am not just a collection of responsibilities. That I am a human being with depth, connection, and the right to rest without guilt. That if I let your influence settle into my life, even quietly, I think I could become the version of myself I've needed for a long time. Still driven, still committed, but no longer living at the edge of exhaustion, someone who allows himself to be human without apology. With you beside me, I do not lose direction. That I finally walk it with steadier steps. There is something I want to leave with you. Tonight, after walking through all these hidden rooms together, I allowed myself to speak without a shield. That I let you see the weight I usually carry alone, the doubt I rarely acknowledge, the softness I have guarded for years. And instead of turning away, you stayed. You listened as if every silence mattered. You held space without asking me to be more or less than I am. I need you to know how deeply that affects me. People often imagine strength as something I wake with each morning, something unshakable, but strength is something I choose again and again because I believe others need it from me. When I am with you, that belief loosens, that I realize I do not always have to resist every expectation, that I do not always have to hold myself together, that I can set the armor down for a moment, and the world does not collapse. You show me a different kind of strength, the strength of being seen. Honestly, without performance, that I hope you understand what it means that I turn toward you tonight, that it means I trust you with the quieter parts of me, the parts that struggle, that ache, that long for rest, that it means I believe you can hold space beside me as I find my breath again, and I want something for you, too, that I want you to know you deserve the same gentleness, the same steady presence, the same room to be human without defending it, that I hope someone in your life offers you the same space you offer me here. Your care has weight, your patience has impact, your presence creates refuge even when you don't realize it. So if tonight felt different, if something in these words reached a place you usually keep guarded, then maybe we understand each other more than either of us expected. Maybe this moment is not about what you held for me, but what we created together. A quiet place where neither of us is to be strong all the time. That if this story stayed with you, type present in the comments. That it tells me you're one of the few who truly understand.